We're going live on our Facebook page and YouTube channel right now on Hot Country Hits 99.9 and 102.7 WMOM. Kristi Lucas-Zimmerman in the studio with us. Kristi, how you doing?
I'm fine. How are you, Chris?
Good. I'm glad to have you here. We're going to be introducing the individual that you brought with you here in a moment. But for a good at least a year, right? You've
Yes.
been working on this housing assessment. And I know that there's been conversations. I mean, the mayor and the city manager were just in. We've had conversations over time in regards to the housing needs, the issues here. And it's just been an issue, right, for a lot of people. You see on social media people looking for homes to rent, and there's nothing out there, at least they say. Is that the case? First of all, is the question, and welcome to the studio, by the way.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having us here. By and large, that is the case. There is not very much out there, and we kind of knew that, but we wanted to do an assessment to know exactly what we're dealing with here. I mean, we could give you all sorts of anecdotal evidence, but we wanted numbers around that. We wanted to know what are all the issues, where do we most need housing, and to help us to start determining some priorities. The first thing with the problem is figure out what the problem is.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as the economic director here in Mason County, your role is basically that, right? You want to be able to make sure that the businesses are sustainable, that people are able to find homes so that they can get to their job by living local, right?
Exactly. Yes, this role is really about business development and community development because those go hand in hand. And if you can't find a place to live, then it's difficult, really to reside here, to work here. Our businesses are having a difficult time finding people. It's all intertwined, and so we need to start getting down to what's the actual real information on the ground.
Absolutely. And as a former principal, right? Principal
Yes.
and educator here, you have lived here for pretty
More
much
than 30 years. Yeah.
And so over the next few minutes, this conversation that we're going to have, and by the way, if you're just joining us, you can watch this on our Facebook pages, Hot Country Hits 99.9, 102.7 Mom FM, our YouTube channel, as well as over the radio and your smart devices. But is it any different 20 years ago, 10 years ago now? What is the difference?
Well, I saw the difference when I was working at United Way of Mason County. I did that for several years after I retired from education. And in the first part of my career there, or my time there, people needed the move-in money for a rental. That was the obstacle. But in the last couple of years of my time there, people would have the money but would have no place to move into. So I think it's been difficult for many years, but it's gotten to really beyond a crisis point now. And so we want to study the issue to allow us to take action that will actually be helpful in improving the situation.
Have you run into business owners or general managers or those that have said, we have had to look different ways with candidates because that person that we wanted can't move to the area?
Yes. I've heard that time and time again from business owners, really at all levels. In particular, at the professional level, it's difficult for us to attract a candidate when there's no place to live and nobody wants to drive 30, 40, 50 miles to get to work every day or avoid that if they can. And so it really limits us. We would, some of our companies would be expanding if people could afford to find a place and live here. Okay. So it really is an obstacle to development.
And I guess my last question before we introduce Patrick for you is, you've worked with other economic directors, development directors throughout the state. Is Ludington rare? Is it kind of part of the same mix? What is the differences, if there is?
Unfortunately, Mason County is not a rare situation. It's a crisis really everywhere you go. The state has a housing plan to create 75,000 new units in the next several years because it is a problem really everywhere that you go. And you can ask Patrick about his experiences across the country, but I think almost everywhere you go, you're going to see a problem. There may be some slight differences, and Patrick may allude to some of those in his presentation today, but they're not distinct. Our population is a little bit older here, and so that's a little bit different maybe from some other places. But really, it's a crisis everywhere that you go. I think here for us, we're a little bit more isolated where we are in Michigan, and I think that adds to the problem. But I think you find it a problem everywhere.
All right. If you're just joining us, Kristi Lucas-Zimmerman, Economic Development Director for Mason County. You have 2 events today that will take place at 1:30 at the Ludington Area Center for the Arts. That's where Patrick, who we're going to introduce, is going to do a presentation of all the research that you've gathered over the last how long?
Well, it's Patrick who's gathered it. We've assisted, but for the last really since the start of the year, and it finished sometime in July. So the first at least 6-7 months of the year. So it's an extensive survey. We're really happy with Patrick's report. And now it puts us in a position to take some steps to become housing ready and to attract developers, because now we can prove that there is a need, not just say anecdotally that there is.
That's great to hear. That will be streamed at 1:30 live on the Chamber's Facebook page, Chamber Alliance of Mason County. And then there's a second opportunity and these are open to the public where people can come out and ask questions of Patrick and the others.
Right.
7:30 tonight at Mason County Central High School Cafeteria, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's free, open to the public, no registration required.
Okay. Let's bring in Patrick. Patrick Bowen. Patrick, you've been on the sidelines for a moment here. We appreciate you taking some time to visit with us. Let's talk about, first of all, your company, Bowen National Research, out of Ohio there. You help municipalities, counties like Mason County, find out this data to what Kristi had mentioned, be able to prove to people to say, hey, we need your help to develop this, and you're going to make money ultimately. You're going to build your company, a construction company, development, so on and so forth. Is Mason County different than many of the counties here in Michigan or across the country?
Kristi's right. And thank you for having me here, by the way. Kristi's right. You're not really different than everybody else. Unfortunately, the nation's going through a housing crisis. Everybody knows this. I think the value of having a study done like this is to document it, right? Everybody that comes to listen today, but also the presentations I'll be doing twice today, they're going to hear things they know, right? You have a shortage of housing. Housing is not affordable. Everybody knows those things, but when they see the numbers and see really how minimal the choices are available to people and the affordability issues that folks are facing, I think that's when it hits home. And that starts to get people motivated, whether it's on the elected official side, like, okay, we knew we had a problem. We didn't know it was this bad. But as Kristi said, too, even from the development and investment side, developers will see this and look at it for opportunities and say, okay, this clearly is a market that is in need. I have an opportunity to develop here and do well. So no different than the rest of the country. The good news is there's a lot of communities out there that are facing the same problems. Some are ahead of your community, and so they're doing some things proactively to try to resolve their issues, but there's no single solution. It's a big hurdle, but step one, you have a needs assessment completed, and so now you move forward.
Do you see that and I say burden, and it might look at it as a negative thing, but is the burden land on who in this particular case? Is it the city and county? Is it the community? Is it the businesses? What happens in these situations?
It's everybody.
Okay.
I think the problem is so big, and not just here in Mason County. The problem's big in every market that we study. So for anybody that thinks that government alone is going to solve this, they have underestimated the problem. If they think the development community can do this on their own, again, they've underestimated. It's really all hands on deck. The community has to be supportive of whatever those efforts ultimately be. And Chris, one of the things that's different now that I would say since COVID hit is that employers are now starting to become part of the solution. They're feeling that. You asked Kristi a moment ago about economic development and what does this mean for businesses? And that's what we've seen in the last few years, where a lot of employers are now speaking up. We do a lot of employer surveys where we ask employers, what does housing mean to you? What is it doing to your business? what if housing issues could be solved? Would you hire more? And the answer is yes, it's hurting us. Yes, we would hire more if we could solve our local housing issues. So I think employers need to be part of the solution. And the last thing I'll say is when we've done surveys of employers, again, we didn't do it here, but when we've done surveys in other markets where we've asked employers the question, would you be willing to be part of the solution? Right around COVID, that was 5% of employers would say yes. That's probably close to 20% now in a lot of the markets we survey. So you can see the level of interest is growing because employers are feeling the squeeze of housing.
Take us through for a few minutes, if you don't mind, of how this data collected or how you do this research. You don't have to give us the secrets, but what's the path to get to these results?
Yeah, but there's a lot that goes into it, and if you had an hour show, we could do that. But there's a lot of demographics information that's collected, both where you are today, who lives here, their incomes, the household compositions, things like that. Also projections into the future. We look 5 years out. How are you expected to change demographically? We look at a lot of economics, both, again, trend data, but also who is bringing in businesses and hiring, things like that. And then the housing supply. It's a housing needs assessment. So we do a lot of housing research. We pull multiple listing service data for sale housing data to study trends, what's happening with home prices, what is available to purchase. And then our staff is pretty phenomenal in the sense that they do a lot of research, contacting apartment managers, management companies to get information on the rental housing supply to get a good understanding of what the housing stock is looking like, again, both on the rental and the for sale side. So much more goes into it, but that's probably the biggest components to our research.
Do you mind me asking the $1 million question, which is, do we have possibility here in Mason County?
You do. I think our housing gap estimates came back at close to 2,400 units you need to solve your local housing issues. Now, you will not build 2,400 units in the next 5 years, but that starts to set some goals for the community. And in addition to that 2,400 units, we break it out by rental units versus for sale. We break it out by different affordability levels. Do you need it for the lower income households? Do you need moderate price stuff or even high-end housing? So. Okay. Yes, there's opportunities here. That's the kind of stuff. We arm our studies with a lot of information that developers will be looking for. So while obviously we had a scope of work we were supposed to cover, I'm always trying to think of who else might use this. How else could this benefit the community? So we arm these studies with a lot of information that specifically speaks to developers and the metrics they seek and want to know. So yes, there's a significant need for housing, and there's a great opportunity to do something good here.
Could you see, and by the way, if you're just joining, we're talking with Patrick Bowen from Bowen National Research, Kristi Lucas-Zimmerman, the Mason County Economic Development Director here in the studio. Do you see when you present, or when Kristi will present this to contractors, construction companies, developers, and so on and so forth, that they react? Do they actually say, we can, and maybe right now is different than pre-COVID, but do you see that they'll react?
They do, because they're looking for opportunities. And I think one of the great things about having this study done is you've put yourself ahead of a lot of other counties across Michigan that aren't getting these types of studies done. So when developers look for opportunities, yes, there's probably due diligence that they go through a process to find out where is the best opportunity for me to develop. Mason County has a study done. So you've already done a lot of the legwork for them. Sites have been identified in the study. Potential sites were identified. Okay. And so there's sites, opportunities for developers to start looking at some of these. But then they have a lot of data to say, look, if I wanted to build apartments, what is a reasonable rent for me based on what I normally build? The study has that. If they want to build for sale housing, what's normal in this market? What is offered? Where are the needs in this community? The study arms them with that kind of information. So they do respond to this. We work with, we do over 500 site-specific studies for developers across the country every year. Okay. So they're looking for certain data. This study has it.
Is there, without giving it away, because I know today's presentation is important for you to lay it out in a way for the community, is there anything that's going to shock us from a community standpoint?
No. Okay. It really isn't. It's a shortage of housing, both on the rental and the for sale side. In fact, it's a concerning shortage. You have probably about a month of supply left on the for sale side. So if nobody built another home and nobody put their home on the market, what you have left, I think 43 homes would be gone in about 5 weeks.
Wow.
So that is concerning. Yeah. In the realtor world, and for realtors, when they look at that, they're looking for about 4 to 6 months of supply as a healthy for-sale housing market. You got about 5 weeks left.
Wow.
Of that supply.
That's shocking. I mean, from a real estate standpoint.
It is. But I guess not shocking for me in the sense that I keep seeing this everywhere, right? So so I guess it is shocking to the community to realize it's that minimal of available housing. For the rentals, I think you had like 13 units available to rent in apartments out of over 1,000.
Yeah.
Well, that's shocking too, I guess, in that
absolutely.
sense, where it's like, where are you going to rent? So it's, and the last thing I'll say, at least to this topic, is, we have economic development representative here. And I think that's the disconnect for people is when they think of housing, they're not thinking about the implications to the local economy, to the workforce, to the employers themselves, to ultimately economic growth for a community. And that is absolutely critical to understand. These are linked. So if this community wants to continue to grow and thrive economically, you have to have housing be part of the solution.
All right, good information. Last question for both of you. It's a two-part question, but same question. Is what questions do you expect or want the community to ask you at 1:30's LACA presentation or at 7:30 tonight at Mason County Central?
Well, hopefully if I do my job right, I won't get questions about the data itself. I think it's going to be more, how do we move forward?
Okay.
And without saying an answer, because again, ultimately I'm not the decider here in this community, there's a lot that can be done. And that's probably what I'll leave this with. There's so many ways, whether it's a local government that can do certain things, whether it's the development community, nonprofit groups, employers, there's a lot out there that can be done. It's a matter of, Mason County has to pick its path.
Understandable. Kristi, to dovetail off of that, same question. What do you, and come on this side of the microphone if you don't mind, so people can see you online, and close to the mic if you don't mind. What's your expectations today, tonight, that you want to share with the community and for them to ask questions about?
Sure. A couple of things. The first is, how did we even come to do this study? And I will tell you that we have local leaders who are very concerned about this issue. So I'd want the community to just walk away thinking, okay, our leaders care about what happens here and want to help make the situation better. And who funded this study? So this was Mason County. This was the City of Ludington, City of Scottville, Habitat for Humanity of Mason County, and through a grant from the Community Foundation for Mason County. So we are very grateful to those 5 organizations to help us. But I would be disappointed if we weren't asked, so what are we going to do with this? What comes next? And so we are committed that this does not become a report that sits on somebody's shelf, that we do something with it. So we just last week, learned that we secured the grant that we were seeking from the Office of Rural Development to hire a consultant to help us take this into the next steps.
Okay.
Really, the next steps become making us housing ready. There's just a lot of steps to development, and there can be a lot of obstacles to development. So we've chosen a consultant who, like Patrick, has decades of experience in this work and will help us take the needs assessment further into the community and get the word out, but also determine what kind of housing people would like to see in their respective units. Take a look at zoning, because sometimes zoning can get in the way of building, and also how we can take advantage of some new laws in the state of Michigan that help us to incentivize developers to come here. Building costs are high, interest rates are high, it's very expensive to build, and sometimes incentives can be the key to making a project go through. And then everybody really wins in that kind of situation. So,
do you mind me asking the question that you're going to still probably be asked from time to time, although we are seeing action now, but people are going to say, we've been talking about this forever. When is there going to be something that happens? How do you address that, or you are addressing it? But how do you get that over to the community?
Yes, it's a great question, and a totally understandable one. I mean, people are frustrated, and rightly so. This is a basic human need. I would answer that by, now we have the information we need. We can't do anything without getting that information, because, as Patrick said, it's a crisis everywhere, and we are ahead of some other communities in the fact that we have done that. Small comfort, though, if you're looking for housing, so that we are going to work really this is my number one community development issue, and I'm pulling local leaders in to talk about, okay, what do we have to do next, and to keep this on pace, because it is an urgent need. So I just encourage the community to learn about the assessment and reach out to us if you have further questions, and just know that we are, this is top job. This is number one, working on this housing issue.
Are you pretty happy about the results?
I'm very happy. It's a very thorough report. It's very actionable, and Patrick made very specific recommendations to help us get started. And there's just a lot here. It will also put us in a better position for grants, because that helps us when we say we have our ducks in a row. We have studied this issue, and if you give us that grant money, we are going to do something with it. And they like to see that we've done that legwork.
It's great to hear. Well, I can't wait to hear about it, see about it. It's at 1:30 this afternoon, Ludington Area Center for the Arts. It'll be streamed live on the Chamber Alliance of Mason County Facebook page, so people can watch. But you're encouraging people to come out and ask those questions, right?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. And if you cannot catch, one of the two meetings, again, we'll have the tape of the live stream on the Chamber website, and we'll also post the report there. And certainly people are free to contact me if they'd like to learn more about it or ask any questions.
All right. Sounds good. Kristi, thanks so much for taking some time with us.
Thanks, Chris.
Absolutely. Patrick, same thing. We appreciate you being here, and we look forward to finding out about the research later today.
Thank you so much.
You got it. It is 9:43 here on 102.7 WMOM and Hot Country Hits 99.9. Stick around. More music on the way in just a matter of moments. And as well, the 10 o'clock hour closing in shortly here on 102.7 Mom FM, Hot Country Hits 99.9.